Welcome to Humanity Rising. I'm Tom Eddington. Jim Garrison is still traveling and will be back with us again next week. Delighted to have you with us this morning or evening or wherever you are in the world for day 9 of this 2-week program on When Peace Was a Secret. We're happy to say that because of all the work we've done over the last 9 days with regard to peace literacy, tomorrow's focus will be a slightly bit different. But I'm particularly excited about today's program because we finished the journey around the 8 sectors of the peace wheel, culminating in today's program on culture and media. And when I look at the 8 days that we've covered and the journey we've taken around the peace wheel that Pathways to Peace and Avon Madison created decades ago, I feel like this program in particular on culture and media it both presents the opportunity for us to speed shift to peace, to fundamentally and very, very quickly change the global narrative that we've all been living in, that peace is some kind of impossible dream for us to strive for but never achieve. And yet at the same time, culture and media, because of the business models of the media companies, it feels like it's the most challenging. And so I'm going to invite our audience today to hold that duality of media and culture has the greatest opportunity for us to realize that we're already, and we have been, living in some version, some level of peace. And we live from that place. Well over 7 billion of the 8 billion of people on the planet live in that place already. And yet the narrative that the media and culture has such a strong hold on us that it makes it daunting for us to change our narrative. And with those opening comments, I'd like to invite my dear friend Marilyn King into today's conversation.
Hello, good morning. Good morning, good morning. It kind of feels like each of these days I've gotten more excited, if that's even possible, because I wake up excited every day. And today, I'm not going to give any large contextual reminders for those who might be new, because I want to spend every moment that we can with my peace brother, Duane Elgin. And I'm also going to do my best to say just a few things about him that cannot even come close to painting the picture of who this man is. So a couple things I'd like to say is, one, when people use the word visionary, it feels like kind of a throwaway line. It is not a throwaway line. This man, I was very emotional all morning. Duane is so busy bringing his new chapter of what he's doing on the planet to life. And time-wise, but he said yes to me that he would be here. So this man is a visionary, and throughout his life, he is someone who has seen underneath and way ahead of the turbulence that's going on the planet, to the deeper trends that people haven't even seen yet. And not only that, but how those things are coming together and transforming our world, both in positive ways, but also the challenging things that are there. So if you were to take a look at the panoply of books that he's written, it's almost like breadcrumbs and stepping stones. So, and I don't even know what the order is, Duane, but it's like Awakening Earth, Voluntary Simplicity, Promise Ahead, The Living Universe, and now Choosing Earth, which we'll get to hear about today. And what I loved when I looked to see, because Duane and I, as much as we love each other and our peace brothers and sisters, we have not been able to be in each other's lives and stay current on each other's work. But I saw that little video on his website where he really draws a very mind-friendly picture of these potential future pathways and 3 of these trends that are moving in a direction that are catastrophic. And then this small set of trends down here that has the ability, the power to interrupt that, and that we are the interrupters. So I encourage you all to go to Duane's website. And I won't go into, please go, look at his bio, but we're talking presidential commissions. I knew him because of his background at Stanford Research International and being paid to do futures research about things that people weren't even thinking about, including, being intimately involved in remote viewing things that people thought was pretty woo-woo back at the time. And then for me, I don't know how you pronounce it, but I think it's the Goi Peace Prize from Japan. But the reason they awarded it to him, I thought was very prophetic, because he is a visionary, because of his work in the area of consciousness and lifestyle. And it is those three things that come together that make me just so beloved to him. And then between he and I had the incredible privilege of being in a 5-year think tank with Duane. And for me, that's a place where my mentor overlapped with the background that Duane brings. So Willis Harman's comment that global mind change is the fastest way to world peace really was what brought me into the relationship I had with Duane. And the fact that Avon Madison created the 3 tools we've talked about around the role that one day when the whole world looks at peace, and that we can use what we're using right now, the peace wheel, to really look at the essential elements of peace and become literate about what's happening and what we can do to accelerate the next evolution of peace. And then we were exposed to the whole notion of scenario planning, which I really see in Duane's work, that he is able to look and talk to us about potential scenarios and how you can be involved in ones that create the scenarios we're interested in. So there are people that, Duane, I hope you will talk about, some of the people that have influenced you. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself through the lens of people who have influenced your work, but also your pioneering work in not just using media, but creating structures within media to bring and give a voice to things that people weren't even thinking about yet. So the last thing I'd like to say, and then turning it over so we have all of our time with Duane, is as I was emotional and thinking about Duane this morning, I thought, you know what? This guy's been so far ahead of his time. People weren't even thinking about these things, much less putting them together. And unfortunately, so far ahead of his time that the funding hasn't been there to support who he is and the value that he brings. So I thought, you know what? If there's such a thing as karma, Duane Elgin will be the richest man in heaven. So with that, I would like to introduce my peace brother and dear friend. And Duane, if you would please share with us some of what has shaped who you are, what you're bringing now in your current work, and how media and what you have seen through your long and pioneering history, the development of media, the role it has played, and what you see now in what you. So thank you. I love
dear Marilyn, you're so sweet. You're such a dear soul in my life. Thank you, Marilyn. It's so good to be here with you. I know I can't rise to that introduction, but we'll just explore. And I think it's important for people to know I'm just a farm kid at heart. I grew up on a farm in Idaho. And really, I got my grounding with the plants, the animals, the life on a farm. And even though I've been blessed with all kinds of opportunities to be with people around the world, it's been the more unpretentious aspects of my life that have really shaped who I am and how I approach things. And I see myself still as a farmer. And what I'm doing is planting seeds for the future, seeds of possibility. I don't necessarily expect these to grow, to blossom in my lifetime. I've seen how life works in its seasons and cycles. And so really, I've been blessed just to have the opportunity to, well, let's create a seed or two here and plant it. And And that to me has been the greatest learning, the greatest lesson, the greatest opportunity. And so we can talk about people and places and all of this and that, but I just really wanted people to understand where I come from.
Yes.
So please, how would you like to explore?
Well, so for me, understanding who you are and your work right now, because it's really, for me, a merging of all of those influences that you've had. I mean, the idea of futures research, so I think that that's a very important component that you bring that, most people on the planet, don't get to go there. So please bring that part.
Okay.
Um, and, all of the ahead of other people awareness, where you were alerting people to what's happening on the planet and to the planet, and the work that you did. And now that's like everybody knows that, but they don't really know what to do. So I think that impacts your work, right? And then for me, because this is about culture and the media component of the Peace Wheel, your pioneering work in, that 300,000 whatever media stuff you did way back then, you have a perspective on how it was possible to communicate ideas a long time ago. So if you just touch a little bit of that, of how you see that has played through your own career and what that brings to your work now.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So I started looking deep into the future in 1971 when I was began my first job out of college, and that was working on a presidential commission on the future. And we were looking ahead from the 1970s to the year 2000, a 30-year anticipation looking ahead. And that really launched me into the scholarly side of futures research. Um, and what I saw again and again is that people were not ready to look deep into the future, that our mindset as a species, as policymakers and all the rest, was essentially narrow, and it was shallow, and it was short, narrow, shallow, and short. And I thought, my goodness, here we have a mandate, a presidential mandate to look 30 years into the future, and we're being asked to look narrow, shallow, and short. And I said, well, let's look wide, let's be inclusive, let's look deep, let's look at new paradigms, new values that are emerging, and let's look long, more than 3 to 5 years ahead. Let's begin looking 30 years, 50 years into the future. So that was my beginning into the deep inquiry into the future. And as much as anything, there's looking into the future, and then there's looking around me at the people that I was working with and seeing, we're not doing this. We're not stepping up to the challenges and the opportunities at hand. And it was after doing the future studies for 2.5, 3 years that I then moved over and began working with the futures group at the Stanford Research Institute. And that's where you mentioned Willis Harman. So I worked with Willis for nearly 6 years, and others at the think tank SRI International, working for the President's Science Advisor, the National Science Foundation, and so on. And more studies on the deep future. Now, here's the thing. Let's just boil it down. What did I learn after this half century of work? Well, I learned that there are basically three views of the future that I think are dominant in the world today. The first is more of the same. We're just going to keep going as we are. We're going to muddle through. We'll get there somehow, and so on. We'll cope with climate change, species extinction, resource depletion, and all the rest. So that one future is continuing along the current pathway. Another future, and we're seeing this emerging strong right now, and it's an authoritarian future. People are saying, well, look, This is just too complicated for the average person. I'm a strong leader. I'll fix it. I'll make this all work. And so if we are feeling disempowered in our lives, we'll say, okay, well, let's turn it over to a strong authoritarian government and leader, and they'll fix it. The third possibility, and that's the one I want to emphasize today, is that we'll transform it. We'll see that we cannot keep going as we are. We have to step up to a new level of maturity as a species if we're going to have the opportunity to live in a more welcoming future, habitable future, livable future. So the three pathways, going back to them, continuing as we are, it means we're going to run into an evolutionary wall. We're going to hit limits to growth hard, and we're going to crash and burn as a civilization. We must step up to a new future if we want a promising and livable Earth in front of us. It's imperative that we not surrender to authoritarianism. That's surrendering our freedoms and our capacity for imagination as a species to a collapsed view of the world. And that's what's happening right now in many parts of the planet. Thirdly, the future of, well, maybe the pathway ahead is founded on our ability to communicate with one another as a human family, as a species. And could it be then that the pathway to peace is through communication, peace through communication? And which means it's more than just thinking differently. It's in our hearts and in our everyday lives, coming into a new level of communication, conversation, and exploration with people around us that we're living with on this small Earth now. And that's the pathway of promise, as far as I can see, peace through communication. Now,
Let me just ask you to pause for a moment. Would you speak just a little bit, because you have this lengthy history, the ability to communicate and the mechanisms that we have been using, you have used and pioneered in a number of them. So if you could just, over that same length that you've been sharing this wonderful history, which is so important, and your perspective, speak just a little bit about what you have seen and what you have used and engaged in order to do that communication.
Right. So when I started on the path of peace through communication, if you will, it was in 1980. And I co-founded a nonprofit called Bay Voice, the electronic voice of the San Francisco Bay Area, Bay Voice. And we were using telephones to talk with one another, and television to learn and what people were saying. And so we combined television and telephones to create electronic town meetings there in the Bay Area. And to illustrate, we put an electronic town meeting on the air in 1987, working with the ABC television station. And that program, a primetime hour-long program looking at attitudes towards Russia back in the 1980s. And over 300,000 people in the Bay Area watched the program. 300,000 people. And we had a scientific sample of citizens ready to feed in to the electronic town meeting with their votes, their views. And we had 6 votes from the scientific sample during the course of that hour-long electronic town meeting. And it demonstrated powerfully we can learn, and we can give feedback, and we can talk to ourselves as a community. And despite the success of that program, it drew a full, more than a rating point ahead of the programming it preempted. It was then set aside. It was canceled, if you will. Because, well, we don't care that much about the future. Let's look more narrow, shallow, and short instead of long, deep, and wide, as we were pushing with this electronic town meeting process. And so Bay Voice was the foundation for me looking ahead at larger possibilities. I was not discouraged. I said, come on, let's keep going with this. And so Bay Voice has
So I want people to know this is in terms of why Duane Elgin should karmically be the richest man in heaven. His work has been so far ahead that you can produce results like that and still they will say thank you very much and move on.
Okay. So now here, I want people to understand over really almost 50 years, the evolution of this. It started with Bay Voice, and now it's Earth Voice.
Yes.
Bay Voice to Earth Voice. And Bay Voice used television and telephones. Earth Voice uses the internet and mobile phones. So to find our way into collective conversation. Now, until very recently, Earth Voice was just an imaginary possibility. But in 2018, 50% of the people on this planet finally got access to the internet. Half of the people on the planet. Now, 6 years later, it's gone from 50% to 2/3 of the people on the planet. 2/3 right now have one of these, a cell phone. And we carry these mobile phones in our pockets. We carry them in our hands, and our future is right there. If we want to talk to one another, well, how in the world can we do that? Well, pick up the phone. Pick up the phone and call home. We have it right now. The technology already exists. And they say, well, 2/3, that's pretty good. Well, in 5 more years, it'll be 3/4. So technology is not the issue. We have the means in our hands, in our pockets every day to talk with one another as a human family. So the challenge then is not technology, it's being able to communicate with that technology. And people say, well, look, there are all these different cultures and languages. How in the world can we bridge that barrier? Well, artificial intelligence is coming along powerfully right now. And artificial intelligence, I've been looking at the projections. When will we be able to instantaneously, I can speak, it will be translated into German, Russian, whatever language on the planet we want, in that culture, instantaneously. When will that happen so we can speak with one another as a human family? Well, the projections say it will be there full on by 2025. Hey, we've got 3 or 4 months here. And the windows are really going to open because the technology is there, the ability to communicate vocally and other ways with one another are there through artificial intelligence. So then the barrier is not technology, it's not languages and such. It is our ability, our decision to communicate with one another. And so the organization I've co-founded right now is called Choosing Earth. Choosing Earth. Come on, let's choose a new future for the Earth. One of peace, one of that's livable, one that's welcoming of our lives and not one exploiting the Earth and using it up. And so we are in the process now with the organization Choosing Earth to begin organizing around the Earth. And I'm giving away everything that I have learned about electronic town meetings at a global scale to an independent organization. No one will own this organization other than the people of the Earth themselves. And the last remaining barrier to our communication is trust. As simple as that, trust. Who can we trust? Well, what if we organize ourselves independently as a species to have an Earth voice working on our behalf? Well, that's what we're working on. We're looking at 7 regions of the Earth, 3 people in a region, 21 people can come together and be the formative group, the conveners for Earth Voice, and that could happen within the next year. we can begin that. Within the next 2 years, we can do we can do this. It's just so amazing. These opportunities are literally at hand. And so peace through communication. This is a pathway to peace. My premise is we either talk or we fight. And we are fighting right now as a species. And we're not talking to one another really, really. But as soon as we begin that process of talking and seeing that's an alternative to fighting, we can begin building a new level of maturity in how we relate to one another, respect one another, connect with one another, and choose with one another a pathway ahead that has real promise, real potential for creating a livable and welcoming future. So, simply stated, that's where I see it now.
Well, let me draw you and I together, for the listeners right now. And, just, I am speechless. And there's something that I want to communicate to weave these two threads together. With all that you just described and, the capabilities from the technology and our ability to communicate with one another, the question arises, so what is it we want to communicate? What's the message? And I love the way that you said it. It's like, we can do this. We can do this. And that's exactly what happened for me in the Olympic Village. I looked around at every race and species and political persuasion and countries at war, and we lived at peace. I looked around, it was like, holy shit, we can make it. We can make it as a planet and a species. If these people
That's right.
can live in peace on the bus and in the cafeteria and on the playing field and hug and go out for drinks and dance with each other, it's like, we can do this.
That's right.
But, like you, Duane, it's like people haven't been where we have been. People have not been able to see what we see. So your work right now, in terms of choosing Earth and calling this the Earth voice, and how do we do this, right? It's just a beautiful way. And I love that you brought it back to trust. Because one of the unique things about, being an Olympian is, and I've said this just forever, but people don't seem to put the pieces together. There are Olympians in every country. And some of them have very high visibility. And we also have high credibility on how you achieve things that seem impossible. And guess what? People trust us. So what is going to happen when you and I actually get a chance to hang out together? And we bring the fact that I created helped create the World Alumni Association of Olympians, which didn't exist when we were working together, right? But when we bring like that megaphone of Olympians, that we can make it as a planet and a species and direct them to things like choosing Earth and the Earth voice, the how-to is right here. Everything we need is right here. And the only thing I would say to you, Duane, my friend, in terms of where you started in this conversation was, I'm a farmer, and and I see everything in seeds, and I don't really expect that these things will blossom in my lifetime. Excuse me, I'm not allowed to say fuck, but fuck that shit. We can speed shift to world peace, because you can change someone's thinking in a nanosecond, and new thoughts lead to new behaviors, and that we can create that shift in a moment as we bring our work together. I love you fiercely, my friend.
Yeah. Here, thank you so much for. We can just shift in a moment. Yes, change our minds about what's going on here. And I say to people, the next great superpower is us. It's us as ordinary citizens that are around the earth, that are carrying these cell phones, these mobile phones in our pockets, in our hands. That's us.
Yes.
And the next great superpower is not going to be a bunch of billionaires. It's not going to be strong authoritarian nations that try to control the earth. It is not going to be a collection of corporations. It is not going to be the military. It is us, just the plain, ordinary us.
And that's why I see Avon's work when there is one day for us to celebrate us, and we can break it into manageable bite-sized pieces so people can see how they can participate. And then the peace wave. People don't understand that the perception still is, well, they don't see how all these pieces fit together. But the peace wave has the ability that I intend to open my phone in the morning and look at a picture of the planet and see how many people in the previous time zone have stepped up. I call it the Olympic peace team. And they can score 1, 2, or 3 points because they're more peaceful in themselves. They did something, you know, in their neighborhood. They can score 2 points, or they can be involved in systemic change. But this thing that we're holding in our hands has the ability to inspire people because they can see people around the world like them who are engaged with as the Earth voice.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you do such a great job of framing and asking questions that will allow us to use our time really well. So I'm wondering, certainly, Duane, if you want to pick up on anything I've said, but I'm also, Tom is just so brilliant in these conversations.
Okay.
Well, I've been sitting here sharpening my elbows to see if I could find a way into all the energy the two of you were creating.
The love fest.
I just want to inject, Tom, beforehand, I want to follow up on Marilyn's thread there and just say, now, how in the world can you do anything with that piece of magic we can hold in our hands? Imagine the following. We have an Earth Voice gathering, and the moderator says, okay, well, pick up your phone. We're going to do a vote here of the people of the Earth all around the planet. And here's the first question. Do you consider yourself a citizen of the Earth? People would say, well, you know, well, yeah, okay, yes, I do. Okay. Well, are you concerned about the future of the Earth? Well, yeah, I really am. Okay, yeah, okay. Well, another vote. Well, how about climate change? Is that a concern for you? Well, yeah, it really is. Well, we're not doing much, really. Should we do more? Well, yes, we should do a lot more. I'm really concerned. And my point is, within the space of minutes, we can begin to take the pulse of the planet. We can get the feeling of the people of the Earth and what they want. And now, right now, we're looking narrow, shallow, and short. We're looking narrow. We're not looking widely at all the people on the Earth. We're not looking deep at the prospect of changing values so we can live differently on the Earth. We're not looking long and at how we can begin to implement these values and grow into a transforming future. So my point is, I wanted to give you that just tiny little example of voting and how in just minutes, a new consciousness can begin to emerge on the Earth. And people say, did you see that? We came together as a species for the very first time. We voted. We said we belong here as citizens of the Earth. We said that we want a new future. We voted for it together. Let's do this. Tom.
Yes, and Duane, I'm going to add one piece. Because the Olympian thinking framework that came out of my experience said that when people achieve something at the highest level and achieve things that people didn't think they could have even imagined, it's passion powered. So what you just described, the passion is there. And you're calling on their thinking. You know, what are you thinking about this? It has to be able to move to action. And the acceptable human performance literature says that people won't get involved in something if they don't think it will be successful. So I would add to what you just described that we also, as a result of that global voice that you just enabled, that returning back, we have to provide an easy, exciting way for people to see how they can engage in the planet that they're so concerned about. Yes, we should do more. And here's what you can do, and see that it's actually going to make a difference because all of the rest of these people agree and they have a way and they are getting involved. So that's the place that I think is just the juicy moment.
Yes. Yes.
So, Duane, great to have you with us today. And I've got a couple of things I'd like to get your perspective on. And I'll start by just saying that I was attending a retreat this weekend. There were 165 people on the Zoom screen, multilingual, and each of us, all we had to do was just click a button, and we were getting real-time translation. So what you were talking about, the technology is here. I experienced it this past weekend, and I was blown away by having a French speaker sharing and immediately getting both their French speech as well as an English translation real time. I had heard about the technology. It was my first experience with it, and it's incredibly exciting. But I want to go back to the three scenarios that you outlined and talk a bit about the actors. So with scenario one, where we think we could just continue with the way that life is on the planet, and I think of businesses running the agenda of the world, and so they have a vested interest in having that scenario continue to play out. Scenario two with the authoritarian, I think of humanity as being in our teenage years, and just like adolescents everywhere, we've gotten ourselves in trouble and we're looking for our parents to step in and save our behinds. And so we're seeing autocrats being elected around the world. And scenario three, I'm especially curious about who are the actors that are going to make that scenario come to life. And so I'd love to get your comments on all three scenarios.
Okay, quickly. Scenario one, more of the same. When I was born, there were about 2 billion people on the planet. Now there are 8 billion. We're headed towards 10 billion, given United Nations estimates, 10 billion. The carrying capacity of the Earth is roughly 2 to 4 billion, according to numerous scientists. In other words, the resources of the oceans, of the land, and so on will comfortably carry 2 to 4 billion people into the long-term future. But here we are at 8 billion, going towards 10. We're somewhere at least 4 billion people over carrying capacity. Now, that's a condition of survivalism. And that's certainly the case of the impoverished people on this planet. And the drive in survivalism, well, I have to take care of me and my family and all the rest, first of all. And so it is a fighting future. And that's what we're creating for ourselves, a future of profound conflict, because if we have 4 billion people more than we can comfortably take care of, we're in big trouble in terms of conflict. Now, that future means we either accept the conflict or we change our minds about what's going on here, recognize that we are in an impossible situation to just keep going as we have, and that we need to reconfigure how we live on the earth. We need to live more moderately, sustainably, simply, and all the rest. And there's enough for all of us to move together into a transforming future. We can do this, but we have to change our thinking about what's going on here, given that we have these billions of people that have emerged in one lifetime. So that's future number one. Future number two, you're exactly right. There's an adolescent mindset that says, well, I'm going to just give it up to mom and dad, the big brother, whoever, however we want to describe this, and say, well, I'm just a kid here. What do I know? I'll give it over to the powers that be and so on. And that's happening around the earth. That's a very scary future to me, because once we're locked in, it's going to be really hard to get out. And the third future is where we say, well, yeah, we're in our adolescence as a species, but that's good news. Hey, we're just a short ways from our early adulthood. We've made a lot of progress here. Let's just keep going. Move from our adolescence and into our early adulthood. And what do? We start taking responsibility for the human family as well as our personal family. We say, well, I have things I need to do on behalf of the earth as well as on behalf of myself, as a selfish person, let's say. So we can do this. We just need to step back and look at what is unfolding in front of us right now and say, okay, I see this pretty clearly, these three futures. Let's choose a future of promise, a future of communication, a future of collaboration, a future of cooperation. And that is now possible using the technologies of language that Tom, you just mentioned, the possibility of the internet and so on. And we can then create a new consciousness around the earth, a new consensus around the earth, that we want this new future. And so that will bend the curve. I'm not trying to stop where we're going. I'm trying to bend the curve so we don't hit an evolutionary wall straight on. Instead, we begin to turn, we can glance off of the limitations of the current world that we're creating and move then into a more promising direction, that of the third transforming future, peace through communication. So.
Well, and let me, that bending, and I know that some of your early work was really focused on population, so I hesitate to even say anything about this, but when I got involved with Lynn Twist and saw what happened when people focused on ending hunger and they identified 5 kinds of hunger, they strategically eliminated 3 and predict when they can end the other 2. It's what happens when people focus on what they think is the most important problem that helps to bend that future. And from the population standpoint, we don't need to go down this road, but I still hold some information from way back then that there were dire predictions about the population going way, to 15 and 20,000 people, and people focused on that in order to bend the future. And while the numbers that you shared, I'm sure, are accurate around what the Earth can handle, the fact that we're actually looking like we're going to be able to, interrupt those dire predictions
Right.
At about 10 billion people. So I think it's really important when people feel scared about those numbers like 10 billion, that they also see that people bent that future by focusing on that issue. And the second place you mentioned in terms of the authoritarian rule, and how difficult it can be to interrupt that once it's in place, I want to remind us all that it's because of Gene Sharp's work, From Dictatorship to Democracy. His research on the history of successful nonviolent revolutions has been used by mostly young people around the world. And we don't see it as a trend of the Orange Revolution, the Arab Spring, what those young people did in Tahrir Square in 18 days and took Mubarak out, who'd been there for 40 years, and put everything in place to squash. So there are people who have been bending those disastrous images of what the future would look like. And it's just our turn to step up. And what you're doing gives us the opportunity to see how these trends are coming together, and what you're creating, bringing, who you are and your history into, choosing Earth and the Earth voice. I want to turn it back to Tom because he, again, has the ability to move us in a very effective direction. But I wanted to put those bending the future people, so that people here listening get it, that people have been bending the disastrous future scenarios for quite some time. And then my question is, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I want to focus our conversation on the future for a moment, and just given your life's work, Duane, I think you'll have an interesting take on it. So, for most people, their future is clouded by their past, and they can't see the possibilities of the future because their past is in their future. Or their future is clouded by their present, where they're looking at their current living conditions, they're looking at the state of the world, and it's influencing and it's affecting their ability to see the future. And here in the US, we have such a short history that we're often referred to as a country that's future focused culturally versus the European countries that tend to be more past oriented. But I'm just wondering, what's your take on what's getting in the way of us being able to see the possibilities of the future, and what will it take to shift our ability to see the future that we want to live into?
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward that we are so successful, it's going to be the vehicle of failure. Our success is actually keeping us from opening up and looking at the wider world. And by success, I mean material success.
Right.
And we are so driven uh, as consumers. We're assuming that our happiness and our well-being is a function of our ability to consume. And we've been fed that idea again and again over decades by the mass media. And then it says, you are what you consume. And there are other cultures that say, I have a being, a life here, a soul here that's way bigger than the material things I consume. So we have to break out of a consumerist mindset. Now, that is incredibly difficult unless it begins to crumble of its own accord. And that's what's happening right now. Consumerism is losing its momentum. It's beginning to fragment, break apart, and people are beginning to say, I in the past, that was my way, my path. I believed in consumerism. And now they're saying, I'm starting to believe in myself, in my family, and the rest of us to come together and think freshly in a new way about the world we're creating together. And so what is beginning to happen is the unraveling of the consumerist mindset. And the consumerist mindset really grows out of a sense of the world, the universe is dead at the foundations. And consumers say, well, it's just a bunch of dead matter and empty space. We better consume as much stuff as we can because it doesn't matter. It's just dead matter and empty space. But a new mindset is emerging, which is really reaching back into the deep experience of our species. And it says, no, we're living in a living universe. And this is emerging from science, from spirituality, and people's direct experience. We are living in a living universe. Now, if we're living in a living universe, what do you want to do? Instead of exploit it, you want to take care of it. The people in a dead universe say, well, it's just dead stuff, exploit it. If you're living in a living universe, you say, no, take care of it. It's alive. We're part of that aliveness, and let's grow ourselves into that aliveness. And so that's beginning to emerge. It's measurably is beginning to emerge, not just in a few people's idea. That's our heritage, really, as a species. So begin to shift our paradigm, our mindset, our global mindset that we're all living in a living universe, and let's take care of the place that we're in so we can move into that deep future and take care of the people of the earth and transition consciously, mindfully, intelligently into a livable world. And we can do that.
Yeah, so I want to pick up on that point. I use slightly different language. I don't talk about living in a consumer-based economy or consumer-based world. I think of us living in an extractive world where we're not just extracting from the earth, but relationships are transactional. Everything is an extraction. What can I get from this engagement? What can I get from the world? And we need to shift from extraction to a generative way of being.
Yeah.
And I'm, like fish in water, they don't know what water is. We're living in an extraction world. So how do we fundamentally help humanity understand that they're living in an extractive mindset and shift to a generative mindset?
Yeah. See, that's really key. That's at the core of all of this. And media is creating our mindset.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that. Media is creating our mindset. Well, what drives the media? Well, it's business. And every time you turn on the television set, you're going to get a whole series of ads. Every time you go into the internet right now, you're going to get a whole series of ads. Yeah, I go on and I see, well, we're on the verge of nuclear war with Russia. But first, we'll give you an ad for your new hair product. Well, How about your dogs? How are they holding up right now? Oh yes, nuclear war. Yes, let's go back to that. We are distracted again and again and again all day long with advertisements that say you are a consumer. Here's what you need to consume to be happy. You buy this, we'll give you the good feelings that you want. So we are being hypnotized
Yes.
by our media to think that we live in a dead universe and all that's really going on here is stuff to buy, products. Well, deep down, people know it's different. Most people, and this is measurable, we could do the surveys and all of that. Deep down, they say, well, there's more to life than just buying more stuff. They know that. But who's going to affirm to them this bigger view, this longer view, this wider view that of who we are and what we're doing here? So the global mind change is really a change of global media. We need a new global consciousness through the global media to really facilitate our encouragement, our rising to our higher potentials as a mature human family. And we can do this. See, the point is, it's already here, but we need to uncover it. And it's being covered over right now by the transactional mindset that, Tom, you bring up, of you give and get. What are you giving? What are you getting? And it's more than just you're getting more stuff to buy.
And for me, remember who's here, right? That we have Olympians around the world, and you talk about mindset and mindset change, inviting people to be on a winning team. What's the winning team? It's not about more stuff when you die. The winning team is, up-leveling humanity, being part of a thriving earth, indigenous notion of that what you're doing every day actually supports 7 generations. So we know that people can be seized by a thought. I went from thinking I was an also-ran to holy mackerel, I could be in the Olympics, in the Olympic Village. I'm like everybody else. And then I realized, holy mackerel, we can make it as a planet and a species. So we don't even actually need the large media companies. We can bring together the forces that currently exist at the larger scale, like what happened in Tahrir Square, right? And the things that, anyway, I just believe that global mind change, thank you, Willis, and that we can choreograph things with the existing resources that we have so that people are seized by the thought that they could be on a winning team and they can up their game and start to think effectively, think like Olympians about peace. So thank you.
Said.
I just love that you said yes to being here today in the midst of what you're bringing forth with the Earth Voice.
Yes, the winning team.
The winning team.
Go people. Go Earth. Yeah, it's the new superpower. That's us.
Yep.
It's all of us.
And we need you. The winning team needs you.
Yeah.
No one is going to do it. If the team is going to win, we need you. And right now, you're performing at a recreational level. You get up every morning, you try to change this, and you do that, and you try to get. No, we need you to up your game. So, Earth Voice, thank you. We're choosing Earth. I mean, we can up our game and learn to think like Olympians about peace with what we have at hand.
Right on.
Well, as we come up to the top of the hour, Duane, I'd love to hear if you can point to some examples of where you're seeing this is already happening on the ground, and what each of us can be doing to help contribute to the mind change shift that we've been talking about.
Okay, the first step is I think learning what's going on, really getting underneath the narrow, shallow, and short view that we're given day by day, and look wide, deep, and long. How can we do that? For free, you can go onto our website, choosingearth.org, and you can get a free copy of the book, Choosing Earth. And it's now in 8 languages, and it's going around the world, and people around the world are beginning to see a wide, deep, and long view. And we could talk about that. We don't have much time to do that. So the first thing is to learn. And in addition to the book, we have a documentary film. That's so the book is Choosing Earth, the film is Choosing Life. Watch the film, learn, read the book, learn. Okay, then once you learn, then you say, well, let's talk. Then I've learned something. Let's talk about this. Okay, well then have conversations with your friends, your colleagues, your community, and so on, your church group, your business organization, and so on. The most powerful thing that we can do is learn and communicate with one another. And in that communication emerges a new consensus, agreement. Yes, we want to be on that winning team. Okay, well then if you want to do that, then you can move towards initiatives like Earth Voice. And say, well, the winning team is all of us, and we have the technology and tools right now, so let's contribute to that process of communication development, and it's underway, as Tom, you were describing in that gathering that you experienced this weekend. So it is developing. We tend to be distracted, though, to say the material sides of life are being compromised by crisis, and we're not looking at the mind change aspect, the way we think about who we are, what we're doing here, where we're going. That's a bigger sphere of change. Once we get into that sphere of change and we start looking wide, deep, and long, we're going to look back to climate. We're going to look at species extinction, resource depletion, and all the rest, and we'll look at it differently in a way that's really welcoming of our collaboration, our cooperation, our working together to have a winning team as a human family and move into a more promising future.
And I would add that we also have to be able to see one another, Duane, because somebody could be standing behind you in the grocery store and think all kinds of judgmental things about this old white guy.
Yes.
I have no idea how long you have been a future looking wide, deep, and long, not just as a visionary to be able to see and speak, but to create structures that allow people to act and engage. But we have to be able to see one another. And that, I believe, will be inspirational.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Yes. Bless all of us.
Yeah.
These are transitional times. Bless us all. Yes.
Yes. Yes. And we need you. Every one of us. We need every one of you to do your part. Duane's doing his, I'm doing mine. And the people on this that are with us here today are just like so many people that don't get seen. Right? There's so many people that most of us will never know about who are part of the team and are doing things. And as we can see one another, it will inspire the rest of us to continue, even though some of us are quite tired, but we'll continue to inspire others. And we can pass the relay baton of our wisdom on to those young people who will take it to places we've never been.
Yeah. You're inspiring me here, Marilyn.
Well, it's that thing, it's like this, planting seeds that might not blossom in your lifetime. We can see peace in a nanosecond, because that's how quickly people can change their mind and their behavior.
Yes, indeed.
Well, Duane, just such a delight to have you with us today. Thank you for bringing your wisdom and perspective and all of your experience to our conversation today. Just such a delight, and I would welcome everyone to join us again tomorrow as we wrap up this 2 weeks of programming on when peace was a secret. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about when peace is no longer a secret. We've done 9 days of peace literacy. And as you join us tomorrow, you'll realize that peace is no longer a secret. So thank you, Marilyn. Any closing comments?
I would tease people with tomorrow I'm bringing my Olympian friend Mary, who has a company called Play Big. So we end the peace wheel with Duane, and tomorrow we invite you to dare to play big for peace.
Great.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we continue the conversation.
Wonderful.
Thank and bless you all.
The address for the after chat is now in the chat box. Please come and join us.